Say we are live, we are recording. Awesome. I will kick this off and get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Mirza, and we welcome you all to a live event, our one of our famous online live stream events. And we have a wonderful guest here today who's going to be talking about a very interesting topic. Before I kick off into that section, I would just like to invite everyone to scan the QR code that you see on the screen or just log into Slido with the following code. And this is going to come in handy when you have to answer some of those live polls that are going to come up in this session as well as the Q&A section. All right. And just for and general FYI, we are streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch as well. All right, now, if everybody has got that code as well, I will introduce uh, the title for today or the topic for today. We are going to be speaking to Rebecca Reagan-Thieme, and we are going to be talking about storytelling for strategy alignments. Now, Rebecca is the Director of Product Strategy at SAP, and we're very excited to get started and bring her on board as well. Before we do, just a very quick introduction about myself. My name is Mirza. I have been within the product management industry for about 5 years, worked with quite a few organizations within the B2C, the B2B, and the B2B2C realm altogether. All right. Quick introduction for what Product People does, if you're not aware. Product People essentially is an interim product management, product operations, and transformation acceleration service. But that's what we provide as a service via our in-house staff. And that is what separates us or differentiates us from general consulting organizations. We have our own in-staff that really takes care of you and your organizations like our own. That's essentially how we make money. How do we give back? Well, events like these, online events, offline events, that are essentially free for those who would be interested, because these talks cater to one of Europe's largest product management communities, and our own community well currently has more than 60,000 members. All right. Now, as we get started, we would love to know more about the audience that we have. We would love to know more about the people that are watching. And with that, I would love to ask some questions. We've got two very exciting questions just in this section of the presentation. Would encourage everyone to go onto Slido, enter the code, or scan the QR code here. And the question that we want to ask is, how well do you understand how your work aligns to your company's business strategy? Now, we have a couple of options: not very thoroughly, option A; okay, option B; pretty well, option C; or completely, option D. As you go over the answers, we would love to, get a feel of our audience, and that can help us also uh, perhaps tailor the conversation as we have it. All right, we're going to give it a little bit of time for everyone to get onto Slido, have a look at the question.
And I think if it's all right, I'll jump in just quickly. I want to assure folks, especially if you're in the beginning of your product management career, it's pretty common not to have a clear idea of this. A lot of folks really do have a very good idea of what is important for their particular product area, what their Scrum team needs to get done, of varying lengths into the future. You know, some folks are really clear for a couple of years. Other folks are very focused on tactical stuff right now. And it is pretty common. Myself, I didn't have a super clear idea for the first few years of my product career, exactly how things were aligning all the way up to the company goals. But it looks like people are doing great, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're getting some interesting responses, and would love to also get into more details with what you just mentioned as well, Rebecca. All right, so we have a couple of answers coming in. We see that 50% of the audience aligns with pretty well, about 33% aligns with okay, and 17% align with completely, which means that probably no answers or maybe very minimal answers for not very thoroughly. So I think that gives us an idea that we have a fairly confident group of audiences.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm just gonna move over to the next question now, and here we are. So explaining the question, when you are explaining how your work aligns to product and company strategy, what do you most focus on? The feature shipped, the user outcomes that I've enabled, the customer outcomes that I've enabled, support for your company's business goals, or support for your company's long-term strategy. So, what is the biggest point of focus for you when you are explaining how your work aligns to product and company strategy? All right. I think this is a pretty very interesting question, actually, to be very honest, because there could be similar answers, there could be overlapping answers, but I think um, the PMs who make it are able to find the minute differences and focus on the right things that matter.
Yeah, I think those of us who follow Silicon Valley product and Marty Kagan know that just shipping features doesn't mean a successful product. Really making sure that we achieve outcomes for folks is quite important, and so that's often the first step in getting more strategic as a product manager, is understanding that sometimes you can build something that makes perfectly great sense to you and the team and even goes through usability really well, but it doesn't get the customers what you were hoping to get for them. Similarly, you can make your customers pretty successful in a certain area, but not get the outcome that you're looking for your company. So this is a little bit of a ladder in terms of the higher level of abstraction, I think, means that you can really align all the way up to company strategy.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to strike the right balance as well and trying to find out how you want to approach this.
Mm.
All right. I think we have some answers for this as well. Now, I want to say that we actually have a tie for two of our responses. And the top two actually goes to option number C, which is customer outcomes enabled,
Mm-hmm.
and number E, which is support for your company's long-term strategy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I guess those are the two most important items that people want to focus on, ensuring that we have outcomes enabled for our customers and supporting the long-term strategy of the organization. All right. Awesome. I'm glad to know a bit more about our audience. All right, then. I will move on now. Just a very quick intro slide. Rebecca, I would love to hand it over to you now so that we can dive deep into the topic of storytelling for strategy alignment.
Okay, thanks so much, Nirza. And thank you, everyone who's attending today. I really appreciate it. So you can see I'm a director of product strategy at SAP SuccessFactors. Mirza earlier said the director. There are probably dozens, if not 100, directors of product strategy. There are a lot of folks through SAP. But with SuccessFactors, I've been working in product strategy since 2019, having really come up from the very beginning as an associate PM in 2012, all through the ranks, and have worked my way up to really directing product strategy across various parts of the SuccessFactors HR suite. So that's a little bit about me. I am living in Berlin. This is a picture of me in Barcelona. I am American, as you can hear, and I really love not only product, but working with product managers and helping folks learn the craft of this field that we're in. When I started in product management, which isn't all that long ago, there really weren't certifications or education specifically around product management. You all have that now, which is fantastic. But it also probably means when I started, I had half a chance of getting the job, which I'm not sure I would nowadays. My original education, I have a master's in German, which has a little bit to do with why I live in Berlin, but not very much to do with what I do for a living. So I'm very grateful that product management is a field where a lot of people with a lot of different skill sets can find the right place for them to be and to really bring value to their customers and to their companies. So today we're going to talk a little bit about aligning your work as a product manager to the strategy of your company, all the way up and down the chain, and using storytelling to align that. Now, I think we all know that the number one reason that product that we release doesn't meet the expectations, whether that's your board members' expectations, your investors, your boss, or your customers, it's usually because the expectations weren't that clear. Either the expectations you were given, the expectations you passed on to your engineering team, God forbid, or somewhere down the line, we had a disconnect. And that is, I think, a really important thing to remember. We have a really great responsibility as product managers for making sure that we understand the message coming to us from all of our input sources, and that we're making sure that our message is arriving where we want it to arrive and that people really understand what we're saying. When it comes to that, though, there's really a question. How can you cover all the bases? How can you make all the expectations that might be there for your product, for the feature you're shipping, whatever it might be? How can you make sure to cover them? Well, I'm here to tell you, you don't actually have to. You don't have to cover all the bases. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure of working in a waterfall organization where product requirements documents can get to be 30, 40 pages long, and you're really trying to, in great detail, every little interaction that should happen, and then you throw that to its away for half a year, a whole year, maybe even longer. You can well imagine that kind of world is one where you can really have this bad disconnect between and what's actually delivered. In an agile, lot of opportunities, thank goodness, to iterate and to course correct and to make sure that we're all staying on the same page. So that's a great thing about the world that we're working in right now, but that doesn't mean that we can't enhance our tool set and do a little bit better to make sure that even without necessarily having a sync back with you, your dev manager or your architect can make a decision because they understand some of the most important points of why and how you're building things so that they can make that decision that's going to be in alignment with your strategy without necessarily needing to talk to you. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to just check here if there's any chat, a little bit of chat in the chat. Okay, it looks like I don't need to answer any questions right now. Getting back to the presentation, I'm going to tell you a little story because that's what this is about. So I'd like to introduce you to Marie. Marie works on oil pipelines in Louisiana. She's a pipeline technician and she has a ton of responsibilities. She has to handle some easements and various negotiations and logistics with landowners whose property the oil pipelines run across. She has to actually maintain the valves and junctions and gauges on the pipelines and even further duties. So she's got a lot on her plate. Marcus is one of the landowners that Marie has pipelines going across his land. He has a farm, it's not far from the Gulf, and after a hard day's work, he really loves to feed the ducks in the pond behind his house. He goes there with his 3-year-old daughter, Sienna, and they feed the ducks frozen peas, not bread, because it's more healthy for the ducks. So this is something that really brings him joy. He and Marie have even talked about that when they were talking about where to put the pipelines on the land and so forth. Now, unfortunately, one day, Marie got a notification that a valve on Marcus's land was leaking. So she got that notification. She needed to rush to the location, and she needed to make sure that she got this fixed before that oil leak reached the duck pond. She looked at the valve and found, oh my goodness, this is a new technology. She had not actually been trained yet on this technology, so she didn't know exactly how to repair it. Well, thankfully, her employer had put together an on-demand set of learning content so that the training she would have taken was also available to her on her tablet on demand. So they make everything searchable, and they make sure that everything that Marie needs to handle all of the different technology in all of her different pipelines is available to her at all times. So she was able to find a video, she looked at it, she understood how to make the repair. Now, this story is fake, but on the other hand, it's also real. In 2015, when I was working for a startup in the learning and development space, we were developing exactly this. It was learning content that was available on tablets or computers, but especially tablets and mobile, and available to help people not only get onboarded to new tasks and new responsibilities, new jobs, but also to support them during their work. We had to build a new squad to build some new functionality. And this story was crafted as a way of keeping that squad on track in a very fast cycle of creating a new search that also considered entitlements and permissioning. Doesn't sound that complicated, but it actually was. And it required a lot of tuning to make sure that we had good performance and good reliability, that the content would be available to Marie when she was in this situation. She's trying to fix the valve, lest the ducks get oil on them and their pond be ruined, and so on and so forth. So we created this story actually together as a squad. It was a really fun exercise to create a story that described end to end really what are the needs of Marie, this user, and what is at stake. And so this is what we said to ourselves when it was time to take a decision, when we needed to understand what to prioritize. We always went back to this. We said, we're saving ducks here, people. It's silly, it was enjoyable, and it really became for us kind of the North Star. That was a 3-month project. We got a great search released. We were all very happy with it, and we did make sure that it met all the requirements needed to actually work in this very situation if it were to come up. So for product strategy, storytelling is a great way to help people understand your North Star, whether that's a whole set of features that you're releasing, a whole product that you're releasing, or even just a new enhancement, whatever it might be. Understanding who you're building this for, what is their pain, and what are your priorities, which can run the gamut from priorities about how the work is done, priorities about what the user experience is like, all kinds of different priorities. But if you know all of these things, you can craft a great story, and that story can help keep people on track and also free you up from answering every specific question that comes up along the way. So how do you align this level of storytelling? So the story that I just told, it was a nice story. I found some good pictures on the internet. We're happy with that. But that's not actually aligned all the way up to the goals for that company at that time. How do we align that all the way up to the company's North Star? First, you guys, it sounds like you're in a better situation than I've been in at certain times. My product career did begin with SAP. I went and worked in the startup world and then actually came back to SAP. But starting with SAP, I really was starting as an associate product manager in a huge company. And so there were tons and tons of layers between me and the folks who were making the decisions. So I'll be honest, when I started, I did not really understand how my work aligned up to the company strategy. So I just wanted to give you guys some tips for when you're building a strategy yourself, or if you're in this scary situation of having to confirm, hey, what is the strategy? What are the things that are important to our company? We want to look at what are the essential elements of a strategy. So just imagine you need to ask your boss some questions. You know you've read something from the CEO at some point about the strategy, maybe some new goals that have come through, but you want to understand that North Star. Here are some questions you can ask trying to get to these essential elements. So what are the long-term aspirations of the company? That can be described in so many different ways. Sometimes it's just as simple as win the biggest market share in this area. Sometimes it's beat a particular competitor. Other times it can be something like, hey, maybe you work in nonprofit and all you really want to do is make sure that refugees have a safe get to someplace where they can live safely. And that is really, you're creating technology around the logistics to help people really get to that. So that's then going to be a long-term aspiration, is that your company role in making that possible. The aspirations can really run the gamut and stretch across a whole spectrum of possibilities. Purpose is a little bit different. Purpose is about how your value is created as a company. So you might have the long-term aspiration to get to a safe place where they can continue living and, find their lives or be able to go back home, whatever it might be, but getting them to that initial place of safety. That might be the aspiration for your organization. Question, how does your organization bring value in that end experience? Finding in a minute travel opportunity. That could be the way that you're being in this particular area. To consider, how is your value being created? That is differentiators. There may be other organizations, other companies that are doing it better. How are you doing it differently? We all know a lot about differentiators, but that is part of, obviously, the long-term strategy. And a differentiator at a high level is going to be different from a differentiator at more tactical level, more product feature level. One example is SAP. Anyone who knows it knows that it's vast. We have, I think, 27 different what we call lines of business, and that is really different companies in some cases. The one that I work for is SuccessFactors. It was bought and it was its whole own company. It's a cloud HR product solution. And, it's got a huge suite itself. And so we've got this suite of many suites. And so at one level, at the highest level, one of the differentiators of SAP is that we are investing, and we have invested in integrating across all of these various different services and solutions. And so we can offer customers discounts when they buy more stuff, of course, and a lot of really great features around integrating the functionality, bringing data where it needs to go, making sense of the data from different places. So I work in HR software. Obviously, we have finance software as well. And then we have software about relationship management. What happens when you mix the data, all three of those sources together? You can on which salespeople are making money, for example. So that's a SAP. For the little company that I was working for situation, our differentiator was that we were one of the earliest companies to offer an authoring platform for creating learning and reference content on tablet and mobile device. We had other companies that were selling the content, other companies that had a platform for people viewing the content, but we also had this authoring platform, and that made a difference for companies that had a need for lots of content. Differentiators, again, you have them at mid. Then we get to my two favorite things. Values, I think, are always the most important. What value does the company have? What is their long-term aspiration or their sort of ethical aspiration in the world? It could be, we've got those companies out there who have job requisitions that read rockstar ninja desired, somebody who's fully committed, we're going to work hard and play hard. That's probably not the company for me. I'm a middle-aged lady. Their values are a lot around maybe working fast. We've all heard that Facebook originally had a motto, work fast or go fast and break things. They just wanted to be first to the market. That was a value for them. So their priority was getting out ahead of the competition, innovating quickly, and not worrying about making sure that everything was perfect when something was released. Obviously, that's also changed along the way, but Facebook is still more like that than SAP, for example. Values are really an interesting part of and something that's very important to convey in your story as you're telling the story of your strategy. And then there's operational tactics. This is directly linked to values in some cases. An example would be we are going to make sure that we never release functionality that isn't fully accessible to people using screen readers and other assistive technology. That is related to a value of inclusion and accessibility at the company. And so we have a way of operating. That might mean we don't release something right as soon as we could in the various web and native OSs, but we release it a little bit later when we've been able to make sure that everything works well with a screen reader. That's one example. Another thing, some companies have a lot of process around their agile rituals and so forth. And so that's one of the operational tactics. Other companies have a very strong emphasis on doing product discovery and working with customers, customer development, and making sure that nothing is released or even coded without having a lot of validation up front. These are all kinds of things that are operational tactics. And these go into a company's strategy. You might use them also to create your story or to create your connections between your work and the company's strategy. So getting back to what this list is for, obviously it's nice when you're thinking of your own strategy to have a list like this. You can find it easily too. But it's also a sneaky way. You can ask your way around. If you feel like you're supposed to know what the company's strategy is, but you're not so clear, you can ask various questions that hit on these particular issues. I'm going to take a moment and just check if we've got any. Nope, nobody's asking questions in the chat. Super. We'll move on. Okay, so I'm talking a little bit about my company. I sure hope that's okay, product people. It's a big company, and it's a big part of my life that I work for this company. I give them a lot of my time. So obviously, a lot of my examples are going to come from SAP. I just did a little screenshot here of the main page on SAP that talks about SAP's strategy. And I wanted to focus on a couple of things on this page. So one of the things you see is that SAP, like the main sentence that they say about anything in any marketing situation, in any PR situation, SAP is committed to helping the world run better and improving people's lives. That's a big aspiration, especially for a company that provides all this software for how companies work, for how they get their supply chain up and running, for how they handle finances and reporting and really all sorts of different things. They actually want to also improve people's lives by providing all of this. Another thing I think is important on this page, and you'll see how it connects in just a moment, achieving more across the value chain. They're actually using that on this webpage to talk about sustainability and supply chain and so forth. Sorry, sustainability is next to it. They're using it to talk about supply chain and so forth. But I think also one of the things that SAP wants to do is just help customers achieve more, also ourselves achieve more, increase the value that people are getting out of an interaction with our software or their own business. So this is an example of what a company might say publicly about their strategy. And it's already a good starting place for starting to align your work up to the company strategy. So the way that I suggest you do this is you're connecting your outcomes. So we had a lot of folks who are saying you're looking at user outcomes when you're talking about how your work aligns up to the strategy. You're looking at customer outcomes and the company strategy. If you think about looking at all the outcomes you're focusing on and just making sure they align up to the company strategy, it's a great way to kind of look through your backlog, look at your roadmap, and figure out where you can winnow things away. If you need to descope, which I think is the main part of every product manager's world, descoping things, how do you figure out what to take out? Well, if you can't draw that connection between what's being made possible for the user to what's being made possible for their employer or their other, maybe the user is the customer themselves, I will admit I wrote this in a very B2B context. I should have thought a little bit more about that. But hey, sometimes the user is the customer, then your job's even easier. But if you've got the user and then the buyer and then your own company, you have 3 layers that you want to make sure you've got a clear connection from one level to the other. Here's one example. I've spent the past 4 years building a product, or actually it's just a feature set inside SuccessFactors called Talent Intelligence Hub. One of the main outcomes that we are looking to achieve by offering our customers Talent Intelligence Hub, which is a skills platform. You have to remember we're HR software. So think about it this way. You're recruiting, you're doing performance management and maybe setting development goals, understanding the skills that are necessary for my job, the skills that are necessary for projects that need to get done, the skills that I have, the skills that are needed for the future. All of these things can drive a ton of functionality within the HR suite. But one of the main things that we're focusing on is helping people skill up. You see it every day in the newspapers. AI is coming for our jobs. We have to keep up. The half-life or the life of a skill is really short these days anymore. We have to keep learning new things so that we stay employable. So that's an outcome that we want to use this platform for. We want to deliver it in such a way that it makes it possible to get new skills while working in your company, because you're getting personalized recommendations for learning, for mentoring possibilities, for job shadowing possibilities, for projects you can work on, really all sorts of different things. And you're getting those personalized recommendations so you really understand, what can I do to upskill? So that's the outcome at the user level. At the customer level, there's so many different outcomes, but the one that aligns best here is just they're getting the skills they need in the workforce without having to hire new people. There is a ton of functionality out in the world around this, helping people understand, hey, if I say I want to hire a data scientist in San Francisco, that's going to cost me more money than I want to think about. There are companies that will say, well, if you look for that same person in Austin, it will cost less. And if you look for that same person in your own company, maybe they're not a data scientist right now, but they have 4 skills that are common with data scientists, so you could probably train them up. That's going to cost even less. So that's sort of what we're talking about here, helping the customers to get the skills that they need to get their work done without having to hire more people. And we've got that user outcome. We've got the customer outcome. We've got the outcome from my company, SAP. If our customers are achieving more, they're doing it sustainably because they're hiring from within, they're helping people with internal mobility, they're giving people a sense that they have a future within their own company. And so that's cheaper for our customers. And then, of course, I strongly believe that somebody who feels like they have control over their own career growth, that they have opportunities, they're more happy. So the outcome for SAP is really that achieving more. We're aligning now up to that value, adding value or creating more value for our customers. That's just one example of how we go from a product level outcome all the way up to the company level outcome. Now, we are talking about stories. So you have to have your conceptual connection, but then you want to make sure that it's very clear to everybody, that you don't have any questions about how we should get that done. And one of the best ways, of course, is to tell a story that people can relate to. So you may or may not already know the concept of personas. Probably you do. There are all sorts of different opinions out there about personas. I'm going to say they're absolutely your friend when it comes to telling a story and making it something people will remember. I think if I had just told you sort of a generic story about oil pipelines and valves and getting information just in time and performance support, those sorts of things might not stick with you. But if you know about Maria and Marcus and his ducks and the 3-year-old and the frozen peas, that's a story that's going to stay around and you're going to remember, oh yeah, we're saving ducks here, people. So personas make that possible. With using a persona or a character, that's what it is in a narrative when you create a story, you give yourself the opportunity to create the emotional stakes. People understand not only, ooh, here's a business problem, or here's a, commercial problem out in the world. Somebody doesn't know how to find the flip-flops that they're looking for, whatever problem it might be. When we get the emotional part in there, we understand their stakes. We understand why it's important to people. It also makes it more relatable if we're talking about a person. And it reminds you, as a product organization, as a development team, that you need to really take care of that whole experience of that person. So whether that person is one of your buyers or one of your users, you want to make sure that you're really taking care of the whole thing. I think, I don't know about you guys, but in my world where de-scoping has been a huge part of my job for many years, it can be really tempting to say, well, it's possible to get this done in some sort of dumb way that requires a workaround and has an ugly UI. But if we've got a character in mind, if we understand a little bit about their life and what's important to them, it's easier to remind ourselves, hey, we've got to give this person a good experience. So here's an example. This is not something that was created from the product side, but I couldn't believe when I went back and looked at it, I had the inkling as I was writing this presentation, there's something that SuccessFactors did last year that I think would really fit here. And I'll give you a little story of it. We had a bunch of new AI features coming out in 2024. We have a customer conference in October 2024, and we wanted to get several of our larger customers over the line, like successful in actually deploying those AI features before the conference so they could talk to their fellow customers about their experience. In one case, We worked with actually not a huge customer, a sort of smaller European customer in Spain, a producer of chips and snacks and popcorn and nuts and so forth, called Frit Ravik. And they are a customer that I personally worked with. We created a workshop for them. We talked through all the various outcomes that they wanted to achieve, both for their users and for their company. And then we looked at how do we make sure they have all of their end-to-end needs met in order to achieve those outcomes using our product. That experience and that process led to something really cool that came out of the customer conference experience, customer conference. We had at the conference in Portugal a show floor with lots of booths with our vendors and ourselves all over. We had Frit Ravik on the floor showing people, showing other customers the AI features, create an experience for their users that really made them successful, and Frit Ravik's own their own North Star that they call culture that they were really trying to create. We also made that showcase experience something that you can access online. And this is one screenshot from that showcase experience. You'll have at the end of my presentation and a couple more slides, a QR code in case you want to look at that yourself. But in the showcase experience, they did the same thing. They told stories about people. One of these stories was about Neil. He's a controller. And that is a good example of somebody you could use as a persona. So we're going to get back to Neil, but there's one more thing I want to add as you're crafting that story. Don't forget your values. Remember that you have various ways at your company that you want to get things done. You have things that you prioritize. There may be things that are deal breakers. You may never release, for example, things that can't be used with screen readers or other assistive technology. So make sure you've got those in mind. And now we're going to craft our story. So with SuccessFactors, wanted to give you one more example of values. Here on this screen, we've got something that I think I really treasure about SuccessFactors. One of the things we're aiming to do is give everybody what they need to meet their potential. So I call it giving people what they need to thrive, the skill information, the learning opportunities, the support for understanding what's expected of them, all kinds of things you can do in an HR context. But SuccessFactors says we want people to meet their potential. It's good for the company, and it's good for the person. So now we'll take a look at our story and how that story aligns to all of these things that I've just described. So this is close to what we see in the showcase. Inspired by Frit Ravik's recent focus on sustainability, Neil, the controller, he's eager to try something new, sure how to acquire critical skills and contribute to the company's. Everything that's underlined here is in this first paragraph, it's emotion, and problem. So he feels inspired, he feels he doesn't know how. Paragraph, you'll see a little bit more story. What is happening? So with career and talent development, which is a new solution that we also announced, Neil is guided to target roles. It helps him identify development goals. So there's sort of a whole process around this. But the main thing I want to focus on here is Neil is guided. That's how. And then at the end, we talk a little bit more about what the product is doing. We recommend learning and opportunities based on his skill set. SuccessFactors empowers him to take charge. And that, you see, aligns back up to what I just showed you from the SuccessFactors website. We're empowering people to meet their potential. So this is just a quick example of how you can line these things up, how you can make sure you've got all the right elements, both to actually align your work to your company's strategy, because that's important, and then create a story around it. And one thing I always say when it comes to work, getting things done, making things stick, fun is always an enrichment. So if you can create a funny story, if you can create a story that uses the memes that your team loves to use, whatever it might be, make sure to have a little fun. That will help people remember. And also it just helps you get in the habit of creating the stories, of using the stories the way you might want to for aligning your strategy to your work. So with that, Mirza, I will just give this QR code. This is not a question for you guys. It's just the URL for getting to that showcase if you want to explore a little bit how our marketing team also did an amazing job telling a story. And then I think we're going to come back to seeing what kinds of things are coming up in the questions. I'm not seeing a lot right now, but we may have a moment or two, a few questions in a moment or two. So that's my QR code. I'll just say thank you. And Mirza, let's go ahead with the next part of the presentation. Thank you, guys.
Awesome, awesome. Rebecca, thank you so much. That was a very, very insightful presentation. I have a few questions of my own as well, actually, but before we
Okay.
get into those, um, the audience, I really appreciate those who have stuck around up until now. And if you have, the QR code and the Slido code is up on the screen. Feel free to please have a scan or log into Slido with the code and ask us your questions. Rebecca's here. This is honestly a once in a lifetime opportunity to get somebody like Rebecca to help us also craft our own stories when we want to make those presentations or those, I would say, or have those conversations within our teams, within our organizations, to try and really unlock some success. Right. We'll give it a minute or two to see if we have questions coming in. And all right, I think we do have a couple of, rather, a few questions coming in. Rebecca, I'm just going to read them out to you, and
Okay.
you can take it away to answer them. Um, I see that's all right. We spoke about the essential elements of strategy uh,
Mm-hmm.
earlier in your presentation. There was one thing that seems is or is not there. Would love for you to comment on that. What about the voice of the customer? As an essential element of strategy as well when you're crafting it, when you're creating it.
So I think the voice of the customer is an input to strategy. It's definitely an input to product strategy. It should be an input to company strategy. We see that to greater and lesser degrees out there in the industry. But I don't think the voice of the customer is actually part of the strategy. Really, the company's strategy is the answer to what we're hearing from the market and from customers, in my opinion.
All right, all right. So, to what extent would that, I would say, feed in, to the strategy alignment or the strategy construction? Would it be a sort of a lesser input that rather than being something that you would create the strategy around?
Yeah, so I think this really depends what level you're working at. If you're working at a product level or a group product manager level, voice of the customer is going to have a really large, presence in your inputs. I would anticipate. I think you're going to want to know how people are experiencing not only your product but the problem, the issues in the market, and so forth. So it's just generally always a good idea to do listening. When we get to the level of a company like SAP or even that little startup that I worked for when we were saving the ducks, the voice of the customer is a little bit trickier. I think it's very important to try to get the voice of the customer in a democratic way up to that level. I'm actually moving very soon, next month, to a different team where I'm going to be working a lot more across our customer base and a lot more on making that customer feedback an input to the strategy. And one of my goals there is to use a lot more data rather than loud customers who are large. I think we have a risk really in any size company that, sales or a very large customer who's financially important to the customer has a big say. And one of the things I think, especially once you have a good number of customers, collecting that data and really looking across a large swath of customers is always a great idea. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a minor feature or part of the input at all. Definitely important.
All right, awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Just going to read a few more questions that are now coming in pretty quickly, I would say. So, and just a note to the audience as well, if you want to get your questions in, you want to get them in now because we've got a few of them coming in. All right. What's the most common storytelling mistake you see product leaders make when trying to communicate strategy? And how would you prevent or fix them?
Hmm. That's a tough one. So, product leaders communicating strategy. I think Probably the most common mistake I see people make is assuming knowledge. I saw someone else mention something about how do you adjust the story for different audiences. I think that's really important. It's very easy for us to think that everybody knows as much about our product area as we do. And the fact is, we're living and breathing it every day. I'm sure that I actually made a bit of a mistake sometimes with, I forgot that you're not all B2B PMs. That was a very big mistake on my part. One of the ways to prevent that is actually to consider your audience as a persona, to give them an end-to-end experience and make sure you're taking care of all their needs. In this case, I failed to consider who knows which context. As a product leader, I think that's really important, making sure that you don't assume too much knowledge, and also making sure that you are telling the story in a way that doesn't, I'm going to just say this. It's tough, but I do still see a lot of people, vice presidents, head of product, and so forth, talking about features. And features are cool. Features are what we build. Features can demo and so forth. But if you're talking about features in your story, you're probably not talking at a high enough level, would be my assertion. So I think that's another thing. And it's just, again, actually, if you consider your audience and the experience that you want to give them, you'll probably catch that in advance. I do apologize for my mistake today, guys.
All right. No worries about that. Now, speaking of personas, there is another question that what would be the best way to identify and describe these different personas?
I think it is really great. So one of the most important things that I've seen a product company do is actually get out to their customers and to their users, especially in the space. In this one customer where I worked in San Francisco, we really catered to the deskless workforce, people who are not sitting in front of a computer all day, people who are maybe in a car all day, or using a tablet, or just using their mobile to get things done. And if we had just sort of imagined that experience rather than, I'll just name it, getting out to one of the fast food restaurants that was a customer and understanding how they used the content and what was the way that they handled the problem before, how could we improve it, and so forth. Actually getting there with the users from the customer is amazing. That does require a significant investment, however. So there are other things you can do. You can have customer communities. You can listen to people who come to you if you have any kind of experience questionnaires, or the ability for people to say, did you like this answer that you got from the AI, whatever it might be, those kind of check-ins. That's, again, consistent, direct contact with actual users. So those things are really, they're really helpful. I think if you don't have the ability to really get all the way out to those specific users, other things you can do are, obviously, you can use market information. There are sources of information about how people use tools, information about what are the problems that people have in particular industries. You can get out into the literature and get a sense of what is the world of your customer like. And then, barring that, I will say it is actually still useful to just make somebody up. It's better than not doing it at all. So obviously, if you have something real to base this on, that is the best you can do. I noticed in our showcase, some of the pictures that are on the website are actually people that I met at Frit Ravik. So I think we did the right thing there. We really understood those users. In some other cases, if you've ever done a design thinking workshop, that kind of thing, you're just making everything up. But at the end, you come up with something that you can really describe, you can really test, you can even prototype. And just by practicing the steps of creating a story, of creating a strategy, and even creating a solution, even if you're just making things up, that has a bit more power than saying user, as opposed to Pablo, the person who is roasting coffee in Boulder, Colorado. As soon as you just put those things together, you imagine a person, you understand he has needs, you understand he gets up in the morning and he has to brush his teeth and he might be tired, all those various things. to them.
All right, sounds wonderful. Now, there is one more question I would like to bring in. We have a user that has asked, can you speak about your choice to use a funny or memorable story of being a better approach than focusing on a story that's more common or realistic?
So I wouldn't you want to emphasize funny over realistic. You do want this to be funny. Does is it brings story. It fails. If you talk to folks in your organization, you'll often hear them talk about a limbic opening. They're going to make a pitch by getting to not the rational frontal part of the brain, but they're going to get to something that's further back in the brain. It hits us more at the emotional level. And that could be an example, when I've been working across the many years with this talent intelligence hub area, one of the things I often like to ask audiences when I'm talking about it is, have you ever had a job where you were trying your best, it just wasn't a great fit for doing that well? Now, it's not fun, but it's emotional. Most people have had that situation, whether it's just, I'm a terrible cashier, went to a new team and the manager and I didn't get along, whatever, everyone's got a little connection to that. That is a great way to make sure that you and to keep them with you in the story. Funny is another way to access emotion. So funny is something I chose a lot in that particular company because we were a lot of people, honestly, from a similar cultural background. I work with a much set of colleagues now, and I would not, with my Shanghai teams, for example, same kind of humor as they do. So we have to find another way to meet and find a connection that makes sense to them on a sort of more emotional level, more than just the rational level. Funny is great. For me, it makes it more fun. You have to know your audience and also know your own style. Maybe you're not a funny person. Wouldn't think I was, but it sometimes happens. Yeah, the emotional connection is very important.
All right. Very well said. Very well said. All right. So, to the audience, to Rebecca, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the next section of the presentation. However, the questions are still open. Anyone feel free to send us in your questions. We'll try our best to answer them now, or if not now, we'll do our best to answer them later on as well. Right. As we move to the next section, I would like to give an overview of product people one more time, just to give a better idea of how we can be engaged as an organization. Essentially, product people help facilitate in the form of interim product managers or fractional product managers or even product leaders, where we come in to assist permanent position covers while you're hiring, as it often takes 3 to 9 months per role. We can come and fill in that gap. Parental leave covers, however long they may be, however long your current employees would require it, we can come in and fill in that gap as well. And for any important or urgent initiatives that come in, driving product discovery, building MVPs, developing strategy, where you want to find that little bit of a level of excellence and a second opinion, product people can come in there as well. But not only that, program management, product operations, towards, let's say, upskilling your current teams, creating or streamlining your existing processes, revamping your existing processes, assisting with hyper growth for startups or for organizations moving from one level of scale to another. That's also where product people can come in. And finally, transformation acceleration as well, where organizations want to make a massive shift. They want to go from a sales or a tech-led organization to a product-led organization. How do they do that? What are the things that they think about? What they should think about? What are they not thinking about? The experience at Product People can help assist with that as well. And finally, configuring your overall product strategy and your team structures to set you up for hypergrowth, for scale, to make sure that you are doing everything by best practice, also specific to your industry or specific to your particular use cases. Talking about some of the clients that we worked with, In terms of in the B2C realm, eBay, Freeletics, Blinkist are some of the organizations that we've had a very successful relationship with. In the B2B era, with the World Health Organization, Remote, Alita Health have also been some of our successful clients before. Now, a little bit about the specific statistics at Product People. We have supported over 300 cross-functional teams at 70 different clients, from all the way from Series A startups to publicly listed companies as well. Our current team, we have about 42 product leaders and product managers in-house to deliver high-quality services to all of our clients. And we do take pride in having 62% of women in the team, with 66% of them being in leadership roles. Right. Well, just a bit more on that final point as well, that we have a strong bias to promote from within, and that tends to also attract women from the industry. And we also have a strong look at skills before the CV in our hiring process.
Close to my heart, Mirza. That's great.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Now, if there are no questions coming in further, all right. Final notes for rather second and final notes for everyone. We are hiring at the organization, so feel free to scan the QR code on the left if you'd like to get in touch, if you'd like to have a look at our processes, or you may scan the code on the right to subscribe to our newsletter and receive some really interesting stories and insights straight to your mailbox. To be very honest, this is a personal favorite of mine. Our newsletter is something that really is something I look forward to every week. All right. Now, just to give everyone a bit of a preview of what's going to happen in our next stream coming next week, we are going to be talking to Gaurav Gulrajani, who is the head of product at Motorola Solutions Germany. And the topic for that is going to be product management for when your life depends on it. I think that's going to be a very exciting one as well. All right. So bringing that and to an end to our session for today, we thank everyone for being here. We thank everyone for asking your questions, and especially Rebecca. Thank you so much for the presentation, for the wonderful talk. It was a very insightful topic, and I'm sure a lot of us have learned a lot of things from you today.
Thank you, Mirza, and thanks to everyone who joined in.